Hi! Another video. Thank you for continuing to watch. My name is James Kenobi, 1138 from the RPF. And the last video, I think we were talking about the RPF. We were talking about how I found the RPF. So I joined the RPF, the Replica Prop Forum, in about 2002, well, in February 2002. And it was very overwhelming, it was very daunting, but the more time I spent on it, the more reading I did, the more looking at pictures I did. I was amazed because, as I'd mentioned earlier, I had seen these lightsabers in the Star Wars Insider, and I was very fascinated by them. You know, it's funny because I'd seen Star Wars. I'd seen that at that point there were, you know, there were four or five Star Wars movies, because we had the original three, and then Episode 1 came out in '99, and then Episode 2 I think was in 2002, which is kind of when I was getting back. No, actually, I guess it came out after then. Yeah, it came out in 2003, and then 2005 for Episode 3. So anyway, there were 5 Star Wars movies at the time. And I had seen Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi hundreds, if not thousands of times by this point. I had the video cassette tapes, and I had seen the movies, I had the toys, I had the magazines. But when I got on the RPF, and I started, you know, going through people's builds, looking at, you know, at that time, all we had were production photos, pictures out of magazines. People would take screen caps on their computer from the movie. I mean, I almost felt dumb because I'm sitting here looking at these lightsabers, and I realized I had never really looked at the lightsabers in the movies. I thought they were fantastic. I thought they were awesome. I was drawn to them when I was a kid. That was one of the biggest, you know, weapons in my arsenal as a child, was having a lightsaber with me, and lightsabers are the coolest things ever. And here I am looking at these stills from the movie, looking at these pictures, and realizing that before I got on the RPF, if you asked me to describe a lightsaber, if you asked me to draw a lightsaber, I'm not sure I could have done it with any kind of accuracy at all. I would have said, well, it's a metal tube about, you know, I don't know, this big, and there's a button, and the blade comes out. And I knew what the toys looked like. I remember when I was a kid, I had the old 1978 Luke Skywalker doll, and he has this lightsaber. It's got a black handle and a silver thing and a little blue blade. And I remember looking at it and thinking, well, it looked like it was 2 feet long on the toy. And I remember thinking, wow, this thing looks terrible. When you actually know what Luke Skywalker's lightsaber looks like, and you go back and look at that toy, you realize that it actually is sort of an exaggerated caricature of the actual lightsaber. All the pieces are there. They just are put together kind of funny, out of proportion for that, because it's for a doll, it's a toy. And I went back and watched the movies, and I was like, oh my God, that's a graph. Oh my God, look, there's the clip. Oh look, there's the grips on there. You know, and I became very overjoyed and enthusiastic that I could look at these pictures and I could watch the movie and I could see what the parts were, what they made these things out of. So I became very enthusiastic about lightsabers again. The knowledge that I could build one myself, that I could buy one, that learning that the lightsabers used in Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back were actually made out of found items, is what we say. Items that you could go out and find in the real world. You could go to an antique store, go to a camera store, go to an electronics store, go to a flea market, go to an estate sale. You can find these pieces. Because that meant I could find them. I could purchase them. I set up my eBay account, you know, in, I think, 2002, the same year I joined the RPF. Now that I'd learned what these pieces were, and I'm doing all this research, so was everybody else. It was kind of like the toy craze of the 90s. All of a sudden, we're all online. We're all, you know, the RPF its membership has gone up and down. Back then, I think we had 6,000 members. Now I think we have like 20,000 members or something. But so we were all calling the same camera stores. We were all watching the same eBay auctions, because we had a section in the RPF where you could sell things. People would, you know, find them at flea markets and buy them for $25, And the going rate at the time, if you wanted a Graflex handle, if you wanted the flash handle that held the batteries with the reflector, the thing that was on the camera that they used for Luke Skywalker's lightsaber, I mean, a cheap one was like $600. A real minty one was like $900. The flash that Darth Vader had, the MPP flash, I mean, those things were going for well over $1,000. I think I saw some sell for $1,600, $1,800, $2,000. It was crazy how expensive these things were. And the first lightsaber anything that I bought was the Graflex flash. There's three pieces. There's a top piece, and there's a middle clamp that actually clamps it to the camera, and there's a bottom piece, and the batteries go in that tube, and there's a little plastic thing up on top that the bulb sits in and all that. I bought a top shell, the top piece, and it was empty. It didn't even have any guts in it or anything. And I remember thinking, I'll buy some aluminum tubing, I'll buy some stainless steel tubing, I'll come up with some way that I can make I'll buy sheet metal, and I'll make, because I felt like I had enough reference at the time to make one of these things. And that led me to, because of course my favorite character, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber, oddly enough, my favorite lightsaber. I know, it's crazy, right? The design was so iconic, it was so beautiful, and the first lightsaber I actually owned in my life was this lightsaber right here. This is a version of Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber, and it's made by a company called Parks Sabers, and I purchased it, I believe, in 2002. And this was the first complete lightsaber I ever had. At casual glance, you would say, oh, that's Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber. At the time this was made, we didn't know what hardly any of the parts were on this lightsaber. We knew what this part was right here. This part was a Graflex clamp. This is the middle piece of the Graflex flash. And all these other pieces, nobody knew what they were. People thought this was a sink knob that you turn your water on and off with. It turns out actually that it is. People thought this was a gear from a machine. This would interlock with another gear on a large machine and make things turn. People thought that this piece right here was a rubber grip that went onto like a bicycle handle or a motorcycle handle, and you would put your hand on there and it was made of rubber, is what most people thought. And this piece right here, most people thought, well, if this came off a sink, well, gosh, this looks like a drain, and it goes in your sink and water goes down in it. And so I remember spending hours and hours and hours and hours and hours online, you know, going to eBay, typing in motorcycle hand grip, Suzuki hand grip, Yamaha hand grip, you know, BMX hand grip, trying to find one of these because I knew that this whole thing was made out of parts that had been found. Looking up gears, looking up all kinds of, people would get these ideas of what, maybe it's a heat sink for a motor, so we would spend hours and hours and hours online looking up heat sinks, you know, that it would fit over a DC or an AC motor or something. Years and 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 years went by, and we had no idea what any of these parts were, what they went to. And by that time, I had bought a lot of other lightsabers. I had wound up getting a few Graflex flashes. The market went down, the price went down. I was able to buy a piece of this one and a piece of that one, and I was able to put several of them together because they changed a little bit in the films. You have one for Star Wars and a slightly different one for Empire. I learned that the lightsaber in Return of the Jedi, Luke's, was a cast piece from a machined master. Not something you could make, but to be really accurate, you know. And of course, the new movies were coming out. But I was, you know, I had purchased what I wanted originally back in the 1990s, before the internet was big, before the RPF even existed, when all I had was that Star Wars Insider magazine and the pictures of the Icons saber. This, of course, like I said, this was made by Jeff Parks, not Icons. And I should point out, because we didn't know what these parts were at the time, this saber looks like Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber. In fact, with my Obi-Wan Kenobi costume, I wore it as the saber on my belt for a while. It certainly fits the bill, but as far as accuracy goes, it's not very accurate. It's a good representation of the lightsaber. That led me on my journey. As the years went by, slowly people discovered what the parts of this lightsaber actually were. And that has led me to this lightsaber right here. Let me see if we can get it all on camera there. There we go. This lightsaber right here. This lightsaber is made from 100% all found accurate parts. Currently, this piece right here is a replica. I have a real one that I recently was able to acquire through a friend of mine, but I have not received it yet. It's going to be shipped to me with a couple other things, so this piece is still a replica. On this lightsaber, this actually is a sync knob. Mine is cold. I don't know if you can see the C on there or not with the glare. And what makes it unique is this is a 4-part sync knob. The one that's on here is a modern version. This one was made in the 60s and 70s. This one was made in the 80s. And they are different dimensions. They are different sizes. This one breaks down into 4 pieces. This one does not. From looking at the photos that we have of the actual lightsaber used in the film, we know that this one was used not only because of the dimensions on these little finger cubes and stuff, but because when the saber breaks down, there's a gap right here and different little keys that we can see on here. And it has the D-ring that they mounted on here for attaching it to your belt. This piece right here next to it, let me point where you can see it on camera, is, we thought for years it was a gear, a lawnmower gear, a gear off of a piece of industrial machinery or something, and it actually turns out to be a part of a machine gun. There was a different machine gun that was used on an aircraft, and you know machine guns, they have those long barrels, and then at the end there's kind of a cone shape. And the cone shape is so when the bullet comes out and there's that flash of fire from the chamber, that cone kind of hides it. They're called flash hiders. The cone was actually attached to this piece, and these ridges give you something to grip because it's screwed onto the big machine gun, and the funnel piece would have been right here. And these are also cooling fins. You know, we thought for a while it was maybe cooling fins from an electric motor or something, but it turns out it served a couple of purposes. One of them was to help cool. When you fire bullets out of a machine gun, it gets very hot. The metal all gets very hot. So anything you can do to help cool that down is ideal. So it was discovered a few years ago, I don't remember by who, that this was actually the piece of a machine gun. I was able to acquire one very inexpensively. Of course, this piece right here is still the Graflex. It says Graflex on it, Graflex camera flash. It was discovered, I think, by a gentleman named Justin of World Famous Comics, that this piece right here is actually the display, the old calculators from the 1970s. Before we had LCD screens, they had LED displays, and these were used to magnify the numbers. And we've seen these in pictures of the lightsaber, so we know what they are. They added some little button-looking things on there, and these pieces are actually, we've decided from the size, the height, the shape, that these are transistors that came out of a piece of electrical equipment. The screen-used prop has some markings on top. We've never been able to positively identify those transistors, but these are transistors that are similar in size, similar in shape. They're vintage. They're from the 70s or 80s, but they just don't have the correct markings on top. What we thought was a rubber grip, bicycle grip, motorcycle grip, actually turns out to be this piece from here to here. This whole piece is actually a grenade. It's a grenade that was made for the British Army for World War I, and it was the type of grenade that you would put on the barrel of a gun like this, and you would fire it off and it would go into battle. And this is actually made out of steel, and it was filled with gunpowder and explosives, and it would explode when it landed on the other side, and it was used in World War I on ground warfare, trench warfare. And it was a very difficult piece to come by. I was incredibly lucky, as I was with all of the parts on this thing. I was very incredibly lucky to find one of these in pretty good shape. and this piece here on the end was the very last piece ever discovered. And it was actually part of a jet engine, a British-made Rolls-Royce engine that went in jets like the Meteor. Has these things called flame tubes where jet fuel is injected in it and it's ignited, and that's what produces the thrust. And the engine has several of them. I don't remember exactly how many right now off the top of my head. 9, I want to say. 8, actually. And the fuel is sprayed in, but they needed to balance the pressure so that you didn't have more pressure in one tube and less pressure in another tube. All of the tubes are firing together at the same time to produce this consistent thrust. Well, in order to balance them, they cut these little holes between these tubes, and they made little connectors. So if the pressure was too great in one, it would spill over into the next one. If the next one needed more pressure, it could draw it from the tube next to it. And this is what's known as a balance pipe. The balance pipe has a series of chambers here, and another one of these, identical or almost identical to this, butts up right next to it. And one end goes in one flame tube and the other end goes in the other flame tube, and this is what helps channel the air between the tubes. As you can imagine, in 2013, or even in 2011 or 12 when we discovered this, finding jet engine pieces is extremely difficult to come by. There's not a lot of World War II jet engines still around. This is the kind of piece that with high heat could suffer damage. They were removed and thrown away. I was very lucky to be part of a very special group that was able to get their hands on some, and I will show this lightsaber off again in the future when I get that piece in. Mine's been, I assembled it myself, I painted it, I weathered it. It's a fairly good representation of the screen used piece. It's probably the proudest piece in my collection. This is what got me back into Star Wars. This is what kept me in Star Wars. All those years of looking at auctions, going to websites, looking for pieces, making deals. Icons made this lightsaber, not this one, but Icons made this lightsaber, and that's the one I saw in the magazine. That's the one that I wanted to purchase for myself and was not able to. Didn't have the money, didn't have the support. And when I got back into the hobby, this is what I wanted to make, was this lightsaber. The weapon of my favorite character, the weapon of my favorite Jedi Knight. And for it to be, I mean, this one's great, don't get me wrong. This one's nice too. It's made out of plastic and aluminum. This one's made out of steel. You know, this is, you know, what keeps me excited. I like to show it off to people. I like to tell them about the different pieces and components. I like to share how I've built it. I like to share the details and how I weathered it. I don't know if you can, there's a little close-up. I'm probably not going to focus on this though. You know, this is really what's kept me in the hobby. Of course, I have 20-something lightsabers, different lightsabers, all the Vaders, all the Lukes, all the, you know, the different Ben Kenobi ones. But this is the one. This is my favorite one right here. This is the one that keeps me excited, because this is the weapon from a more civilized age, as they say in the movie. So there's pictures of it in my Folkty account. You can go look at photos of it, and like I said, when I get the new emitter, I will get it put on, and then I will show the saber off again. So that's a little bit more of my journey into the RPF. I certainly hope you've enjoyed this video. If the comments are turned on, because I'm making these, I haven't posted them yet. Feel free to leave a comment if you're able to, and thanks a bunch. I'll talk to you later.